What's up, Met fans? Welcome back, Talkin Mets and Rob. How's everybody doing? Welcome to episode 2 of Mets Hot Stove Live right here on Talkin Mets and Rob. How's everybody doing, guys? I'm going to check you out in the comments really quick. See who's here. How's everybody? Steven, Jose, Nelson. What's up, guys? Thank you guys for tuning in. Got a lot to speak about in this hour edition of Mets Hot Stove Live, guys. We'll get right into it in a little bit. The last time I spoke to you guys, Noah Syndergaard signed with the Angels for 1 year, $21 million. And now that I speak to you today, or tonight rather, Aaron Loop has signed with the Angels as well. So the Angels are picking away at Mets pitching very quickly over the last 2 weeks, over the last week basically. So the good news is that the offseason is not over. And it's clear that the Mets are behind the 8 ball against a lot of other teams that have been planning for months on end, while the Mets have just started to get their front office together, and now they're starting to plan. So let's hope the Mets can actually do something very quickly. There's been rumors about a couple of players here and there, but let's just see if the Mets can start getting going. As we all know, December 2nd rather, is the deadline for the CBA, and that's when all things are going to shut down. Who knows what's going to happen after that, but the New York Mets need to make a big signing or trade before that deadline on December 2nd, because who knows how long it's going to take for this lockdown, strike, whatever you want to call it, to be negotiated and happen. And when that happens, who knows when that can be February for all we know. So I think the Mets need to at least make one big signing, one big trade, so it shows the Met fans that this team and this organization is actually doing what they're supposed to do to make this team better. And as of right now, our pitching staff is garbage. Jacob deGrom, we're not sure about his injury. We're not sure if he's healthy. Carlos Carrasco was injured for most of the year last year, came back late in the second half. We don't know what he's going to be. He's another year older. Taijuan Walker had a great first half, terrible second half, so who knows what that's going to mean. And Tyler McGill was okay, but not great. So there's a lot that the Mets have to do to make this team even a playoff contender and a division contender. And that's exactly what we got to look at right now, guys. So once again, guys, hit on that like button, guys. Hit on that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. I will be with you guys until 6 o'clock. 1 hour show. Let's get talking, guys. All right, so we know the latest news. I did a video today about Luis Castillo. The reason why I made a big deal about Luis Castillo, if you want to go into see more details and what the trade scenario I planned out for that deal for Luis Castillo to the Mets, check that video out after the live stream and you'll get a better idea on why I think the trade is possible with the New York Mets to bring in Luis Castillo. I think the Mets' best route for a really, really good starting pitcher, and I'm talking about a number 2 starting pitcher, is through a trade. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at the guys on the starting pitchers on the market that can possibly be your number 2, none of them are really really that good. And I don't think you can make any of them your number 2 starters. They're probably at best a number 3. And that's many pitchers. That's Stroman. That's Robbie Ray. We can go on and on about the pitchers that are available. The Gausmans of the world. I am not sure that you've seen the pitching market and how expensive it's got. Like Noah Syndergaard pitched 2 innings last year and he got $21 million. It's crazy to me. Anthony DeSclafani from the Giants got 3 years, $36 million. And they're projected that Steven Matz is going to get a little more than that. It's amazing to me. And I don't think the Mets need to use their wealth of money on free agent starting pitching that can be no better than them in number 3. And that's the problem. And that's why I think the Mets' best route, now it doesn't have to be just Luis Castillo. It can be other big-time pitchers that we can talk about later on. You know, Cleveland got a few pitchers that I would like to see that the Mets can take control of. But the Mets need to work on a trade scenario for a starting pitcher because they need that dominant number 2 starter behind Jacob deGrom. Because if, God forbid, Jacob deGrom goes down and he's injured, at least we know we got a guy that can step in his place. He's not going to be better than deGrom, but he will actually step in and be solid enough to keep this team afloat. We saw what happened when deGrom went down. The team fell apart. So the Mets need to worry about looking for pitching by the trade deadline, top starting pitching. I'm not talking about back end of the rotation guys. That can easily be found in the free agent market, and I'm not worried about that. No, if you want to sign somebody who's a number like a Steven Matz, I don't know why the Mets I won't be mad if the Mets can get Steven Matz. It won't be the end of the world. It's not like we're gonna make him our ace. But the bigger problem is that I have with that is that what we are hearing about the rumors about he's going to get more than DeScalfani, 3 years, 36 million. So that means what is he going to get? 3 years or 4 years, $40+ million. So he's going to get $10, $11 million per year, maybe more, for a guy who can be at his best a number 3, at his worst a number 5. And you're going to be paying him $11 to $12 million for a number 4 or 5 pitcher. I don't know. I mean, okay, would I be mad? I mean, it's just money, but at the end of the day, I think the Mets need to focus on free agency with position players, and we know who those guys are. If you want to talk about Castellanos, you want to talk about Bryant, Baez, all those guys you can talk about. Correa, everybody you want to talk about are there. And I saw Steven put about Jeff McNeil. I tell you right now, guys, if you watch the video regarding the trade scenario that I put for Luis Castillo, there's 2 guys on there that I already saw it in the comments already earlier today. People think that I'm crazy. People think that I'm crazy for giving up a top prospect and a guy like Jeff McNeil. If you look at the trade scenario, you'll see why. But the reason why I put that trade proposal in is because one of these top prospects are expendable, and I explain why in the video, and why Jeff McNeil is expendable as well. So look at that while we after the stream, and you can tell me what you think about the trade. And Jose, I agree. The Mets need to make a big splash. They got about a week and a half until the CBA expires. The Mets need to make a move. And there's a lot of players that I think are going to sign and be traded by that CBA because nobody wants to be basically up in the air about contracts, about where they're going to play, where they're going to live, and teams want a little bit of an answer of what their team's going to look like because after December 2nd, who knows what's going to happen by then, by spring training. I mean, for all we know, we might not have no acquisitions, no signings from December 2nd until maybe February. And let's hope it don't go that far. But as we saw during the pandemic and how the Players Association and the owners had a big battle over how much money was going to be paid to the players for a 60-game season, how many games are going to be played, DH, all that stuff. And I think that it's going to be a battle, and we might not hear anything for at least a month, maybe more. So that's what I worry about, and the Mets need to make a big splash. And why not make the big splash, Luis Castillo? That's why I made that video today, guys. So I think Jose, let's see, Steven, you are not crazy, Rob. That is a great trade. Those people are stupid saying that. Crazy, forget. Yeah, you know what? Look, I made my point clear months ago. Even when back last year in 2020, when the Mets, before they had Lindor, before they made that trade with Lindor, I wanted them to use Mauricio in a trade because his value is so high. And then what is the Mets are going to get caught doing is they're probably going to sign Javier Baez for 6 years, probably 5 or 6 years. You got Lindor for 10. So 2 spots where you can put Ronnie Mauricio is shortstop and second base. Obviously, you get Lindor for 10 years. You sign him. Mauricio can't play shortstop, obviously. If you know you signed Lindor and you have a top prospect who's a shortstop, wouldn't you move him in the minors and to second base or third base, knowing that you can use him at some point this year, or even giving him a chance to make the team in spring training for third base or second base? But what did the Mets do? They kept him at second. They kept him at shortstop. Why did they keep him at shortstop? It's very simple. They want his value to be as high as possible because they know that his value is best in trade bait to another team as a shortstop, because they don't want to risk moving him to another position and knowing that if he struggles at that position, it might affect his offense as well. And then his value goes down. The Mets don't want that. And people are saying, oh, you could put Mauricio at third base. Great. So what are you going to do with Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty? Who Mark Vientos is in AAA. Beatty is going to be in AA, probably AAA by the end of the year. So now you got two third basemen that are top prospects in your top five, man in third base. And who knows about second base? You have Cano. You got Jeff McNeil. Who knows if Baez comes in? If Baez comes in, now you have nowhere to put Mauricio. So now teams know that you have nowhere to put Mauricio. So why they know that you're desperate to make a big move. So Mauricio is going to be in the deal. And it's just that simple. It's not rocket science, guys. It's basic common sense. It's baseball organizational philosophy. The Mets put themselves in a hole when they signed Francisco Lindor, which is, I'm not mad about that. But you can't keep on holding. You saw what happened to the Yankees. 8 out of their last top 10 prospects are either off the team or out of the top 10 in their prospect list, because they kept on holding on to them longer and longer and longer, and they lost all value. I mean, they prospects in what happened to Andujar. It's so many guys that teams keep on holding and holding and holding, and they don't want to trade them because, oh, they're great, they're going to be good prospects. They hold them for too long, and then they struggle if they come up to the big leagues, or they have a bad season in the minors and the value goes down. And then no team wants them. And then when the team has to trade them, they get 50 cents on the dollar for a trade. The Mets are in a prime spot to use Mauricio when his value is at the top tier of what somebody would want as a prospect for a trade, especially teams that are looking to save some money, like the Reds or like the Cleveland Indians or the Cleveland Guardians, excuse me. Teams like that who are ready to save money on the roster, knowing they're not going to be a team that's going to go anywhere in the next couple of years. They want team control of a player, and they want to pay less money to the players. Jeff McNeil got 2 years left on his contract. In his rookie contract, he's still cheap. Ronnie Mauricio, if the Reds decide to put him up in the majors, still got 5 years of control after that. That's exactly what the Mets can do. They're given a team, and that's why people in the comments with the Luis Castillo say, oh, that's not enough. Jeff McNeil and Ronnie Mauricio. You have to really think about what the Reds are getting back. They're not just getting back 2 players. They're getting team control of a player who can be a top player for them, just like Jonathan India is to the Reds. Putting Ronnie Mauricio with Jonathan India up the middle is dangerous for a very, very long time. And then they have both of those guys for 5-6 years of control. And then if you throw Jeff McNeil in the mix, who knows what they're going to do with Mike Moustakas? You could put Jeff McNeil at third base, but he can play the outfield as well. And teams are looking for control. And what the Mets can do is be aggressive, and I think Billy Epler is that guy. It's just that I don't know if Billy Epler is going to be the guy who is going to finally figure out how to put together a pitching staff, because that's what he did not do with the Angels. But that's what we have to wait and see. So let's see what we get with the comments. Let's see. And we can Clint Frazier as I don't want Clint Frazier at all. He's too bad with the whole concussion issue. Is a little scary for me. I don't think he's good for New York. He's got a big mouth. I can't trust him, and I don't want another guy we can't trust in this clubhouse. This clubhouse was already fractured by malcontents in this clubhouse who cause problems, and I don't want that again. You got to turn a new leaf. You got to get guys in here that are professional, that will perform, that will come together as a team. The Mets did not have that last year, and it hurt them really badly. It's all good, Hayden. Have a good day. So once again, there was other rumors about Taylor Rogers, who is the Twins relief pitcher. I think I saw that in the comments. I'm gonna do a video about that tomorrow, so look out for that. Uh, he's another pitcher. He's 30 years old. He's had a very good season every year in the big leagues with the Twins. He had, I think it's a little over three. I think it's a 3.8 ERA, if I'm not mistaken. It could be lower than that, but I know it's under a 4. It's like a between 3 and 4 ERA. He's very good. 2 out of the last 4 seasons, he's had a 2.5 ERA. He's been very, very good. 2020 was a little rough for him. Sorry, I dropped my mic. 2020 was a little rough for him, but he was still pretty good. But 2020 was a weird year, so I don't want to look at that. And 2021, he came back, pitched very well for the Twins. But he has a 1 year left on his deal, so the Mets would have to trade for him. You know, at the moment, they lost Aaron Loop. It's looking like the Juris Familia is going to be gone as well. So they got to replace two arms in that bullpen already. So that's a little worrisome. I know Familia is nothing to brag about, but he was an arm in the bullpen who stayed healthy and pitched the entire year, just like Aaron Loop did with the Mets. So the Mets already have to add 2 arms to that bullpen to replace those 2 guys. So the Mets have to be smart about this. You know, Iglesias is still out there. Let's see if the Mets can find a way to get him. That would be a big time pickup for the Mets. They're looking at Taylor Rogers, which is an interesting replacement for Aaron Loop, who is a lefty. That would be a nice way to put better arms in the bullpen to fill those spots with Familia and Loop. The Mets have to do that. The Mets need bullpen help. They need outfield help. I mean, they need everything. And, you know, for a team that was in first place for 100 days last year, they need a lot in 2022. You know, Conforto's probably gone. They're going to need a right fielder. We don't know about Dominic Smith, where he's going to be. Maybe about the DH. He might be around. JD Davis, the same thing. So at this moment, we're not sure about left field. We're not sure about right field. We're not sure about third base. Second base, we can see if Jeff McNeil sticks around. I doubt it. But it looks like Javier Baez is going to be second base. We'll see. But again, the Mets need a lot of help, guys. And, you know, with this CBA deadline looming, the Mets need to make a splash. And we said that already. The Mets need to make a move. They got to make a prominent move. I wouldn't be surprised if the move they make is the Baez move because, you know, it's relatable to them. They know the guy. Baez wants to be here playing with Lindor. I'm not going to get mad if the Mets actually do that. And it's looking like Steven Matz is going to sign probably either Wednesday or Thursday. He's going to make a decision. We'll see if the Mets land him. But again, Matz has other offers on the table, at least 8. So, you know, I don't know if the Mets are going to have the best offer. And I don't know if Steven Matz is going to take the best offer. You know, Syndergaard didn't take his best offer. There was somebody out there that wanted to give him 1 year, $25 million. According to rumors, it was either the Yankees or the Red Sox, and they did not want to. And Syndergaard didn't want to take the higher offer. He wanted to go to LA. So obviously, Matz is a hometown guy. Maybe he wants to come back home. I don't know. Maybe he'll take a few $1 million less to come back to New York. We'll see. Reed Foley, vintage, that's a good going too. You know, he did get injured last year, so that hurt him. He pitched well when he was healthy. So that would be a nice piece of the bullpen. Maybe the Mets are thinking Foley would be the replacement for Familia. And then we got to get a lefty, like I said, Taylor Rogers. Maybe another lefty that we can talk about. Maybe we can bring in Iglesias. We'll see. Seiya Suzuki, I did a video about 2 weeks ago about him. I don't see why the Mets wouldn't be available, wouldn't be interested. They seem like they are. There has been rumors that they are interested. And there is a couple of reports out there that he can get between 5 and 7 years worth between $10 and $11 million. So, an outfielder of his caliber who hits over 300, hits for power, has speed, plays very good defense in the outfield. If you can get him for under $15 million a year, that's a steal, because the going rate for outfielders of his caliber is between $18 to $24 million. So, and that's what is projected for Conforto and Castellanos and possibly Bryant, if you want to consider him an outfielder. So Seiya Suzuki is an interesting and cheaper alternative if the Mets want to go the route of Seiya Suzuki, where it's going to save him a few $1,000,000 to use that money to go elsewhere, maybe like a Chris Bryant, and putting him at third base, which I wouldn't be mind about either. So that's something that we have to look at as well. And he just got posted on Monday. He has until December, I think the middle of December, if I'm not mistaken, to sign with a team, or he goes back to Japan. He's going to the major leagues. That's obvious. But again, with the CBA, he might sign before that. So, because he can't risk not signing with a team, and then the CBA expires, and between the CBA expiring and the time he can be posted, there ain't gonna be no movement. It's not gonna be allowed. So he's probably gonna sign before December 2nd. So you're gonna hear a lot of rumors about Suzuki, and I really do hope. Look, if the Mets can somehow trade for Luis Castillo and sign Suzuki before the deadline, I'll take that before the CBA expires, and we'll go from there. So we got to see. Familia gone. I know. Ruiz, I know. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I trusted him in 15. He gave up, that home run in the World Series. I understand that, but you know what? He's a homegrown Met. It's unfortunate. He came back after the Mets traded him the first time, trying to revive his all-star status, but never really did. And that's unfortunate, but he's going to be gone, obviously. But like I said, Iglesias is an interesting option. Taylor Rogers, Reed Foley, who was a good relief pitcher for us until he got hurt. So he will be in the mix in 2022. Maybe taking the spot of Jeurys Familia, but we need to we have to get a lefty in here. That's for sure. No doubt about that. Thomas Sapucki, has Tommy John, so he's probably not going to be back this year. Maybe the end of the year, we'll see. But we can't rely on that, as we see with Tommy John pitchers of late. They've been taking a year and a half to come back. So let's see. Maybe the Mets can try to make a decent trade to get Taylor Rogers here to the Mets. Yeah, Ruiz, exactly with Ruiz. With Familia. He, if he had his control, he was nasty. With that split finger that he throws, it's nasty if he has control over it. If he doesn't have control over his four-seamer, he's in trouble, because then he just is all over the place. And you can say that about a lot of Mets pitchers. You can say the same thing with Diaz. When Diaz will have a good night when he throws his first pitch, or a bad night. He throws his first pitch, it's a foot outside. We're like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. And that's what we don't want. We need some pitchers that were reliable, like Aaron Loup, like Reed Foley for about a month. That's what the Mets need. The Mets need, with bullpens nowadays, it's a crapshoot. So I think the Mets thinking here, with not signing Loup, is as volatile as bullpens are and relief pitchers are. The Mets probably going to go on to the route. Let's get a couple of arms in here, and let's hit lightning with a bottle like we did with Aaron Loup, because nobody expected Aaron Loup to be the best pitcher in a bullpen for the Mets when they signed him. Nobody thought that. We knew he would be good because he was good with the Rays, but nobody expected him to be excellent and basically be the best pitcher on this staff. And the Mets just lost him to the Angels. So let's hope Billy Epler, we know he can build a lineup, but can he build a bullpen and a starting rotation? He's failed that with the Angels, with the 4.5 years he was with the Angels as their GM. Never could get pitching around that dangerous offense. And he put a team around Mike Trout that can bludgeon you with runs. But when you're losing games 9-8, 10-8, 7-6, you can't win that way. And you need pitching. You need solid pitching. And Epler never did that with the Angels. Let's just hope he learned from those mistakes and he can do what he needs to do here. Because Audie Moreno of the Angels, the Angels owner, never was shy about spending money. And I don't think Steve Cohen is going to be shy about spending money. So let's just see if Epler can spend it smartly. And like I said, I'd rather Epler make trades for starting pitching and use that money like he knows how to use it for the lineup. I think that's his best quality. And I think letting him spend money on free agency for the lineup, for position players, is his best quality. Let the trade scenarios and the pitching that he would need for this rotation and possibly the bullpen do it via trades. Steven, I don't know if Scherzer wants to come here, honestly. He is a West Coast guy. I think he's gonna stay on the West Coast. And I don't think the Scherzer and the Mets are. I don't think Scherzer wants to be a Met. I don't think he likes the Mets, which for obvious reasons. I don't think he wants to come to the Mets. Clayton Kershaw is too much of a risk. Hasn't been healthy. He is not as dominant as he used to be. So wasting that money on guys who will probably past their prime. Max Scherzer is not. He's a little bit past his prime, but he can still be solid. But he has a couple of injuries as well as of late. So again, I don't want to spend money on those type of pitchers because there's no pitcher that I can say, all right, give $100 million to him, put him as our number 2 starter. Stroman is not that guy either. I know some people are going to bring him up. Stroman is not that guy. He is a solid number 3. And let's be honest, he wasn't just because he pitched well for the Mets doesn't mean he's automatically our number 2 starter if we sign him. He's not. I'm telling you that right now. He had a career year last year in a contract year. Be careful what you guys wish for bringing back Marcus Stroman because he is going to get over $100 million. And are you going to give him 5 or 6 years over $100 million for a guy who is probably at his best going to be a number 3 on his best day, a number 2 starter for 1 or 2 starts? He's not going to be that good, guys. And there's too many people that are going to continue to say, oh, we got to sign Stroman. Don't make the mistake of signing Stroman to a massive deal because the Mets lost out on Syndergaard and other starting pitchers that were free agents. That's a mistake, and I don't think the Mets need to do that. As I said, work your way to a number 2 starting pitcher via trade. You have enough guys in your farm system that are expendable. Especially if you sign Baez, you have second base and third base between 6 to 10 years. Ronnie Mauricio is one of your expendable best prospects that has nowhere to be put. Use him to get a pitcher. It's that simple. You got 3 guys on this in this active roster, Dominic Smith, Jeff McNeil, and JD Davis, that you can put in the package along with Ronnie Mauricio to get the best pitcher available on the trade market. You have to do it, guys. There's no mistake about it. All I have to say, guys, is that I think Billy Epler is going to the trade route. Before I do a video, anytime I do a video, I don't just put nonsense out there to get clicks, to get views. There's no need for that. I didn't put this channel up, start this channel, just to give you false news because you guys can call me out on that any day of the week. And I appreciate that. I try to find any type of story, news, anything that I can find I don't just look at Mets beat writers, New York beat writers. I mean, to go into the Cincinnati Reds beat writers, Twitter, and newspaper to find all types of scenarios that they have about Luis Castillo. And one of the reporters, I forgot his name, I think it was Jonathan Stanley or something like that. Jonathan something. He was a reporter for the Reds or a beat writer for a newspaper that is a beat writer for the Reds. He said that a close representative of the team said to him that the Reds are willing to trade Luis Castillo for a top prospect or two and a player that can play every day on their team. That's what they said. That's why I came up with that trade scenario that you will see in the video after the stream. You can check it out. So that's an option for the Mets. When it comes to Matt Chapman, I saw Ruiz just said that with Matt Chapman. I like Matt Chapman. I think he is a very good baseman. He's had a little bit of issue with his hip over the last year and a half. He is a good offensive player, but I don't want the Mets to make a deal just for Matt Chapman. We're going to have to probably get a pitcher involved with the A's as well. You want to look at the roster for the A's? Maybe the A's can give up a pitcher in that deal as well, but it's not going to be cheap. And let's be honest, Billy Beane is not stupid. He knows this farm system, guys. When he interviewed for the Mets job or talked to the Mets about it, he knows the farm system very well. So you don't want to overdo or overspend to get Matt Chapman over here. I really think that you can still get a third. I don't think you have to trade for a third baseman when you have money that you can spend for a third baseman who is out there, and that's Chris Bryant. I think that's very obvious, guys. You know, some people talked about Jose Ramirez of the Indians. Maybe we can get him, but again, I don't want to trade a top prospect or two for a position player like Jose Ramirez or Chris Bryant, knowing that we can just use money to sign Chris Bryant, who can fill a spot wherever you need to. Like if you can't get an outfielder, say we can't get Suzuki, we can't get Castellanos. Now we need an we can't get those guys. You can put Bryant. All right, Bryant's going to be our right fielder. Fine. Now we can worry about trading for a third baseman, knowing that we don't have a lot of options. Now we can go that route. But I think that's why it's important for the Mets to do something so they can see, all right, this is what we have to do. Now that we know that the free agent market is off the table for a third baseman or a right fielder, now we have to look at the trade market to fill that spot. That's what the Mets have to do. So there's options here. But the reason why I would like the Mets to actually somehow try to do everything they can before the CBA expires on December 2nd to do what they can to get Chris Bryant, because Chris Bryant is versatile. You can put him anywhere on the field, basically. You know, you need him at third base, you can play third base. You need him in the outfield, you need him in the outfield. You put him there. It gives them as an option, gives them options to be like, all right, well, we have this trade scenario that we can do with Cleveland for Jose Ramirez. Great. Perfect. So we know Chris Bryant can play the outfield if we happen to do this trade with Jose Ramirez or Matt Chapman or Eugenio Suarez, whoever you want to talk about. We have options now. But again, pitching, trade market, position players, free agent. I think that's the best route for the Mets to go, because there's more position players that are worth the money than there is starting pitching who is worth $100 million, who's not going to be no better than a number 3 starter. It's just that simple. We'll see if the Mets get Steven Matz. I doubt the Mets are going to get him, which is another pitcher off the board for the Mets. So that's something that we can actually see what happens there, which I don't think 3 or 4 years for $40 million for Steven Matz is worth it. But again, he did pitch well for Toronto, so maybe he found something. Who knows? Steven, what if Mets trade McCann, Nimmo, Beatty for Brantley, Maldonado, and that's a little. I don't see why the Astros would do that. You know, they're a team that's still in win mode. You know, McCann is, they're taking on that contract, $40 million, when Maldonado is perfectly fine defensively and okay with the bat, when McCann is terrible. Nimmo, it's no point because now the Mets really don't have, you got an older Brantley who is not a center fielder. He's a corner outfielder. Now you need a center fielder. So that's not going to work. And Bregman, yeah, he'll be a third baseman. That's great. But now you just leave your outfield exposed because you got an older Brantley and you have no center fielder. And now you have a left fielder in Dominic Smith. And other people are talking about Starlin Marte. I don't want Starlin Marte. He is going to get a 3, possibly 4-year deal at 34 years old. In 1 year, who knows if he's going to be a center fielder anymore. So now you're going to have to move into a corner and put Nimmo back at center field. So it's not worth the money in my eyes. Byron Buxton is very interested knowing that the Twins do not want to give him a contract. So he might, there's a good option right there. Maybe the Mets can pull off a big trade for Byron Buxton and Taylor Rogers. You get your center fielder, you get your relief pitcher that's a lefty that replaces Aaron Loop, and there's a big time trade. That's something where you can give up a Mauricio, a Jeff McNeil, maybe even another top 15 prospect to get Byron Buxton over here. That would be very interesting as well. So, that's a trade that I was going to talk about. I'm going to do a video about Taylor Rogers tomorrow. I might actually put Byron Buxton in that mix and develop a package together that would be very interesting. Maybe that would be a good idea, guys, because that's not a bad idea. Because if you could solidify center field with Byron Buxton, not only is he's your leadoff hitter, he's great defensively at center field. He had a couple of injuries over the course of the last 2 years, but he is a dynamic player, and there's no doubt about that. So, you would solidify that leadoff hitter, the leadoff spot, and now you can push everybody back. You can bat Nimmo second, who is an on-base machine. If you need him to bunt somebody over, take a few pitches to make Buxton steal a base, Nimmo can do that. Depending on, now you got your center fielder, Nimmo will either play right or left field. Now you have options. Now you can really worry about third base, and now you have plenty of options. You can get Chris Bryant. You can make a trade for Jose Ramirez, Matt Chapman, Eugenio Suarez. Then the Mets have options. But if the Mets can actually get Byron Buxton, that's a game changer right there. That is definitely a game changer. Ruiz Dominic needs to be trade bait in my opinion. I agree with that. I don't when I talked about my 5 Mets that will not be coming back in 2022, Dominic Smith was lower on the list. I believe I had him at number 4 out of 5 for least likely to come back. Only because I think the Mets want to keep him around as if the DH is part of the plan for the new CBA. You can play Dominic Smith at first base and put Pete Alonso at DH a couple of days a week when you can solidify that defense a lot more at first base. But as I said in that video, JD Davis, I think a lot of people got really sour and down on JD Davis. But you got to remember, when JD Davis got hit in the wrist at Philadelphia in the first game of the season, first series of the year in Philadelphia, I was at that game, and that ball hit his wrist. You heard it throughout the stadium. And ever since he hurt his wrist, he was not the same batter. And he had the surgery. He's going to be better. If JD Davis is healthy, there is no reason why he can't hit 280, because in 2019 he hit 280. He hit 19 home runs. He is a guy who can bat 280, 290, hit 20 to 25 home runs, and knock in 75, 80 RBIs as a DH. JD Davis is the perfect DH because he cannot play the field. And that's why I think, as Ruiz said about Dominic Smith, there is a possibility that Dominic Smith can be trade bait, because there's always somebody who is actually going to need a first baseman. And Dominic Smith is a really good first baseman, probably A+ first baseman for that matter. And that's important for a lot of teams. Who knows what he's going to do with the bat. In 2020, in the 60-game season, he was great. In 2021, he was terrible. So that's something you have to look at too. But again, everybody who you want to trade, Jeff McNeil, JD Davis, Dominic Smith, all their stock is down. Their value is down. But I think the one player that you can say could turn it around and teams can look at that is Jeff McNeil over Dominic Smith. That's why I think Jeff McNeil over the last couple of years was in a lot of different trades. He was possibly in that trade with Cano and Diaz. He was almost in the trade for Javier Baez or Chris Bryant. A lot of scenarios here that the Mets could have went with Jeff McNeil. Let's just hope somebody would actually want Jeff McNeil in a trade and package him to get either a starting pitcher or a position player. And yeah, I wanted Real Muto, but it seemed like he didn't want to sign with the Mets. And there's no way the Phillies and the Mets are going to make a trade of that significance. No way. Yeah, when it comes to McCann, I didn't like the signing. Honestly, I thought you could have went a lot cheaper and get a very, very good defensive-minded catcher who is very good behind the plate, got a great arm, can work the pitching staff. That's what I thought the Mets should have done and use that money elsewhere. And they didn't. George Springer was clutch for Toronto. So I don't know. That was rough. Giving $40 million to James McCann to bat 210 is not exactly what the Mets had in mind. He was a backup catcher his entire career who got a little bit of a few starts for the White Sox and played decent. And they looked at that little offensive stats that he had with the White Sox when he got that start when Grandal got hurt. And they looked at that and was like, oh, that's the player. That's who he's going to be, which is nonsense. And the Mets fell for that. Sandy Alderson fell for that. McCann is not good. He's got a good arm behind the plate. He actually struggled defensively catching balls when relay throws were thrown to him, trying to get guys at the plate. How many balls did he drop this year? Just a lot. And he was supposed to be known as that really good defensive catcher, and anything offensively would be a bonus. Ty, with the $185 million, don't worry about that. Yeah, Cohen knows that the Braves won with $120 million payroll, but you have to see what the Braves did. The Braves weren't shy about spending money. They took on all those contracts at the end of the year with Rosario and Soler and Duvall, all those guys. I mean, they got a whole new outfield. Everybody's obsessed with payroll. People forget the Astros payroll was pretty high when they won. The Dodgers won in 2021, the highest payroll in baseball. $120 million payroll is nothing to be, nothing to be shocked about. It's not a low payroll. It's low for our standards, but it's a pretty high payroll. And you have to remember, they have a lot of kids that they brought up. Albies, Swanson, Acuna. All these guys were brought up from their farm system, and they signed them. Swanson's probably going to get a nice little deal, but they signed Acuna for a big contract. They signed Albies to a big contract, and they used that, and they build around him. You got to remember, the Mets really didn't have those type of players coming up through the farm. McNeil was never one of those guys. Pete Alonso possibly can be one of those guys. Nimmo's really not that guy. There's not a lot of guys that they brought up position player wise that is on the level of Albies, Swanson, and Acuna. If those guys would have came up in a Mets uniform, that's a big difference. When you have those guys to build around along with Freddie Freeman, it's a lot easier to not have a big payroll because you don't have to pay these guys $30 million a year. Acuna is barely making $20 million a year. I don't even think he's making that much. He's making like 17. Albies is making like 15 per year. When look what the Rays just did with Wander Franco. They gave him 12 years for $223 million, which is a little more than $18 million a year. 5 years from now, if he stayed healthy and plays the way we think he's going to play, he could have made $30 million easily, guys. Everybody looks at payroll. I'm not worried about the Mets payroll. The Mets are going to spend money. It's just, are the Mets going to spend money wisely? We can't have another, Mo Vaughn, Roberto Alomar, Jeremy Benitez back in the early 2000s. You can't have that where you gave money to older veterans who were still supposedly in their prime and they sucked. You can't have another Jason Bay scenario. You cannot do that. So you have to be wise with your spending money, and the wise decision that Epler should make is use the money towards position players and make trades to solidify your rotation. As I said earlier in the stream, use your trade pieces that you have. You know, Jeff McNeil to a lot of teams still has some value. Excuse me. I don't know how much value JD Davis has at this point, is why I think JD Davis should be still on this Mets team as a bench option and possibly everyday DH because he can hit when healthy. Dominic Smith is another one. Everybody know he's a really top-notch defensive first baseman who, if he can figure himself out, can possibly hit 20 to 25 home runs and be a big-time power bat for a team who is looking for a first baseman. So they still have value, and the Mets have Ronnie Mauricio, who is expendable. And they need to use trade scenarios and trade packages to get a big-time starting pitcher behind Jacob deGrom. Use your money wisely to sign guys like Chris Bryant, Javier Baez. If you can get Chris Bryant or Javier Baez as your big signing for the year and make a Luis Castillo big trade, that's a big time offseason. That fixes a lot of problems that the Mets have. Solidify third base. Solidify your infield with everybody you need. Now you can work on your outfield whichever way you need to. You know, if you need to make a trade, as you said with Byron Buxton, or maybe somehow you can keep around, you can get a lower, you know, in my trade scenario with Luis Castillo, Kyle Farmer, who can easily go to third base. He's not a great bat, but he's solid. Bat you 260, 270, 12 to 15 home runs, 60 to 70 RBIs. You're not looking for a big bopper at third base. You need somebody who can play good defense, plays every day, can get you a clutch hit here and there, and use your big time power bats elsewhere. Get in that second man behind Jacob deGrom, Chris Bryant in the outfield, maybe Byron Buxton. We'll see. But the Mets need to start making moves. We got to hear something, guys. You know, it's crazy right now. We got a week and a half until the CBA deadline. Something's got to happen. And I would not be surprised if a big trade or a big, like I said, I in my gut, I think the Mets are going to make a Javier Baez signing before the CBA, which is not going to get everybody excited. You know, it's nice. You know, I feel like Baez deserves to come back to the Mets on a decent contract, 5 years, maybe 6. What he showed me when he came back from injury, having a lot more place discipline, and you know, being selective with what pitches he wants to hit, he looked like the MVP that he was with the Cubs. And if he can be that, I'll take that guy 9 times out of 10. Him and Lindor up the middle are going to be great defensively, so I'm not worried about that. But that makes Jeff McNeil expendable as well, which entail why I put Mauricio and McNeil in a trade, possibly another top 20 prospect to put in that deal for Luis Castillo and Kyle Farmer, which will solidify your infield. And now you got Suzuki. Now you got Chris Bryant. You got Castellanos, Brian Buxton. You have options to work on what you need to do in this outfield. And the options are vast if you can make those deals for your infield and solidify that infield. And then you have to worry about your outfield because you already made that big trade for Luis Castillo and Kyle Farmer, signing Javier Baez. One more big move for the outfield, either a signing or a trade, will make this team look a whole lot different and a hell of a whole lot better. Yeah, I agree. Suzuki would be crazy at Citi Field. And, you know, he's a guy who has more walks than strikeouts. Granted, that is in the MVP league in Japan, but I don't think he's going to drop 50 points coming to the majors. He might drop 10 to 15 points. He might be a 290 hitter instead of a 320 hitter. You know, 30 home runs, that's great, but I don't think he's going to hit that much in the pros, in MLB. You know, he hits 23 to 25, I'll take that. And knocking 80 RBIs, that's what we have. But he can play defensively. He can play a very good defensive right field. And he can actually play the infield if you really need him in a pinch. So that's always good as well. Oh, Ross, I think we're going to, I don't know. Honestly, it's up to Steven Matz at this point. He's got 8 offers. The Mets clearly gave him an offer. And it's going to be more than the DeScalfani deal, which is 3 years, $36 million. And it's going to be a little more than that. So it's probably going to be around a 3 or 4 year deal worth about 40 to 42 million. I wouldn't do it, but again, if the Mets are willing to spend money and they're willing to go over the luxury tax, then I don't care about the money. Get whoever you need to get in here, free agent wise. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets make a big deal, trade deal, for a starting pitcher. And I'm telling you guys right now, if you start searching a little bit when it comes to the Reds beat writers, they are very in the know about executives that speak to the media all the time, that get exclusives. Luis Castillo is going to be traded by the end of the offseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if somehow Billy Epler and the Mets find a way to get Luis Castillo in the Mets uniform. I'm not really fond of any pitching. I don't trust the Rays making a trade for a starting pitcher, because if they're trading that guy, that means that he's useless. There's not a lot of times where the Rays get rid of pitching and they pitch good elsewhere, except for a guy like Aaron Loop. We saw what happened with Chris Archer. There's a lot of guys that you just the Reds. I mean, who do you really want? Sonny Gray, who can't pitch in New York. We saw that with the Yankees. I don't trust that. Luis Castillo, again, that's the guy. The A's, I feel like Billy Beane can be a little manipulative when it comes to making trades. So you got to be careful with him. But I think Luis Castillo is the way to go. There's other options as well that I probably get into later next week with a couple other trade scenarios to bring big time pitcher in here. But got a couple of minutes left, guys. So exactly what I'm thinking here, and I'm going to recap for the people who just joined in. The Mets' focus, I think the smart move is to use the money that they want to use in free agency specifically on position players. Pick your players. Whatever you need to do. The Baez, Bryant, Castellanos, whatever you want to do. 2 out of those 3 I'd be happy with, free agent wise. Mets got to use their trade pieces that they have, minor leagues and on the big league level. Use those assets to make a big time trade for a starting pitcher, because when you can get a number 2 behind DeGrom, now you have options behind Carrasco. Behind Taijuan Walker, behind Tyler McGill. There's no doubt about it. This team needs depth in the starting rotation. You need at least 7 to 8 starting pitchers just in case of injuries. We don't know about David Peterson. He was out most of the year. Let's see if he can come back healthy. We'll see if Tyler McGill can be better than what he was. He showed a lot of confidence. He showed a lot of good demeanor. He reminds me with the demeanor that Jacob deGrom had when Jacob deGrom came up. Obviously, he's nowhere near the stuff that Jacob deGrom has, but that demeanor, that focus, I like his attitude. And I think Tyler McGill can be a really good number 5 for us. Jose Camacho. Center field, Marte, I don't agree with that. Suzuki, I agree with. Brian, I agree with. That's a yeah. That's a if that's it. Look, Jose, if Ramirez, I think you're talking about Jose Ramirez. I mean, you already have Lindor. He ain't going anywhere. He's your shortstop. I don't think Marte is a good signing, because you got to give him a 4-year deal probably at 34 years old to be a center fielder. In a year, he's going to be a corner outfielder, and that's if he's healthy. And now you're gonna need a center fielder once again, and you got to throw Nimmo back there. If you can get a Suzuki, I take that over Marte and just leave Nimmo in center field. Maybe we can do something in left field. I mean, worst case scenario, Dominic Smith can be there. Worst case scenario, I agree with Baez at second. Obviously, Alonso and catcher McCann. I'm not a fan of Marte, Jose, but everything else is okay except for the Ramirez because third base Ramirez. So you're thinking Bryant left field. I think that's I mean, if you're gonna trade for Ramirez, you're gonna need a starting pitcher that comes along with Ramirez in that deal. So I think it's gonna be easier to get Castillo from the Reds along with a guy like Kyle Farmer as a third baseman. Better chance that you would have getting Jose Ramirez coming along with a pitcher. So the Mets and the Indians have had good communication and a lot of talk between them, and they seem like they have a good relationship. So that Jose Ramirez can be possible, but I think Luis Castillo is more of a possibility than Jose Ramirez because I think the Mets have options at third base regarding free agency, and that's Chris Bryant, in my opinion. Let's see. But you know what? I'm not going to complain if the Mets. I'm going to throw that up there. If the Mets do this, I mean that's not the. I mean that's insane. They would sign Bryant, sign Suzuki, sign Marte. That's a whole new outfield. You know, I don't see Nimmo anywhere unless you put him in a deal. Unless you, I don't know where would you put Nimmo. And that's why I think this. If you get Suzuki and Bryant for left field and right field, I think you can easily put Nimmo in center field and be okay. I don't know about the Ramirez thing. That's something that you make that trade with Luis Castillo, and Kyle Farmer can be a third baseman. You got Castillo behind DeGrom. That's I'm gonna put up an interesting lineup. Let me just give me a second. So, let's see. Let's see. Third base. Let's see. All right. Give me a second. I'm going to show you something right now. All right. So this is what I'm thinking. That would be my lineup if the Mets make the deals that I talked about. Mets signed the Japanese superstar Seiya Suzuki for it's looking like $10 million for 5 to 7 years. Chris Bryant, you can put him in left field. If you throw him in left field, you got your outfield, Nimmo, Suzuki, Bryant. If you make that trade with Luis Castillo and Kyle Farmer would be a third baseman. Luis Castillo would slot in as your number 2 behind DeGrom. Lindor would be a shortstop. Mets sign Baez, second base. Pete Alonso is your first baseman. Catcher is McCann. You can think about J.D. Davis as a possible DH. You still have Dominic Smith, possibly. It can be rotation, lefty-righty with the DH with Davis and Smith. And you can actually think about using them as defensive replacements every now and then. Dominic Smith in late innings to take out Pete Alonso or give Pete Alonso a day off, putting Dominic Smith at first base. J.D. Davis, I think he could be everyday center DH. Jeff McNeil would obviously be in that Reds deal with Ronnie Mauricio for Kyle Farmer and Luis Castillo. That's what I'm thinking. If that can work out, I think that's going to be a lot of sign-ins. I don't think the Mets are going to go that crazy, but that would be nice. If I have to pick Baez and Suzuki, if you take Brian out of that scenario, then it's not terrible. But we don't know what Suzuki is going to be. We expect him to be a pretty good outfielder and offensive player. It's still a question mark. We all remember Kaz Matsui. Baez, you can say he's going to be really good, but he is a question mark as well. But that would be if I had a crystal ball, and I feel like the Mets are going to spend a lot of money, that's a lot of money. Baez is going to get between 18 and 22 million. Chris Bryant can possibly get 25 million. Suzuki's going to get 10 to 12 million. So that right there is over 50-60 million dollars just for 3 players. So that's crazy, but it's possible. Yeah, Ron, yeah, that's a good call. I didn't even, I wasn't even thinking about Cano. I mean, you can put Cano. I don't think he's going to play the field, so you can put him at DH as well. So, that's another possibility. If he can still hit. I think so. So, if you don't make him play the field, then you can still make these moves and still be a guy who can be a DH, can play around the infield, give him spot starts here and there at third base, at second base. So there is options. Yeah, Nelson, with starting pitching, I talked about the Luis Castillo deal. Uh, that would be a number 2. And honestly, if you can make a trade for Luis Castillo, and that's the only starting pitching move the Mets make for big significance. I'm not talking about depth pieces. As your 6, 7, 8 starter that you might need for an injury. If the Mets got Luis Castillo, you got DeGrom, you got Castillo, you got Carrasco, you got Walker, and you got Tyler McGill. Not including David Peterson as your possibly 6th starter, if he's healthy. And then bring in another 1 or 2 back in the rotation guys that are not going to cost a few $1,000,000 to bring in as your 7th, 8th starters just in case. So those are options. I'm not going to be mad if the Mets make that big trade with Luis Castillo, and that's the only signings they do. Because then you don't have to spend that big money on Marcus Stroman, which I think Luis Castillo is much better than Marcus Stroman. So you're going to give Marcus Stroman $120, $130 million over 6 or 7 years? It's not worth it, guys. But I do like that lineup. If the Mets go crazy spending money, that's the lineup I want. If you're just tuning in, Kyle Farmer he plays shortstop for the Reds, but he also can play second base and third base, and the Mets can easily slot him in at third base if they make that deal with Luis Castillo and Kyle Farmer. So that's where I got Kyle Farmer from, if anybody's just tuning in. So if I had a crystal ball, if the Mets spend crazy money, which I feel like they might go a little crazy, this would be my lineup for 2022. Nimmo playing center, Seiya Suzuki, the Japanese superstar, playing right field, Chris Bryant playing left field, Kyle Farmer playing third base from the Reds. Shortstop is obviously Lindor. Mets sign Baez at second. Pete Alonso playing first base, and obviously James McCann at catcher. So, yeah, I know, Fernando. Look, Farmer is not great, but again, if you can put Farmer in a lineup like this, batting 7th or 8th, this ain't the lineup that I just put the names up there with their position. It's not the lineup that I would put as a 1, 2, 3, 1 through 8. It's not. I mean, I would put Nimmo leading off, Lindor second, probably Baez third, Bryant fourth, Suzuki fifth, you gotta put Alonso probably third or fourth. There's a lot of moving parts that you can put. I didn't really think about that yet, but maybe I'll look at it just now. Let's see. I would put Nimmo 1, Lindor 2, Alonso 3, Bryant 4, Baez 5th, Suzuki 6th. Let's see. Farmer 7th and McCann 8th. I think that would work. Oh, it's my crystal ball, Fernando. I didn't say the Mets were going to do it. It's a lot of wishful thinking. Like I said, if the Mets can get Suzuki and Baez only, I'm not going to be very happy. I'll be okay. But I think they got to make 3 big moves. That's what I think. So, guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. Mets Hot Stove Live, episode 2, guys, right here on my channel, Talkin Mets with Rob. Hopefully, everybody had an interesting time. We had a lot of conversation today about a whole different scenario when it came to all these possible lineup situations, deals that the Mets can make. But again, a week and a half away from the CBA deadline, guys, December 2nd. A lot of players are going to sign, and there's going to be a few trades for sure, because I don't think a lot of players want to risk going deep into the offseason, close to spring training, and not knowing if they're going to have a contract. So going to be a lot of news rumbling all over the place with Mets and baseball news in general. So, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next Tuesday, unless live next Tuesday, Mets Hostile Live. But if the Mets make a big move, I will go live about the breaking news. But until next Tuesday, guys, see you guys next time. It's been a pleasure. Have fun, guys. Have a good night, guys. See you next time. And as always, let's go Mets. Have a good night, guys.